Hello, ladies, and welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion of section 11.5 today. And specifically, we want to go into, in a little more depth, into the concept of getters and setters and what they're all about. So let's get started. Secret code XJ47LB. I don't know what that means. Oh well, let's go into Dr. Java here. Okay, here's the Dr. Java. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about this simple setter that we created before. We talked about the idea that we do a little something more with that. Again, I want to emphasize that the idea behind getters and setters is that you have the ability to completely control how the outside world interacts with the instance variables that are part of the object. The instance variables, or the fields as they call them in the book. This simple setter that we created, called setName, just sets the value that's passed to it, the string the name, into the instance variable name. So what we'd like to do with this is make this a little bit more selective about what it's doing. Let's create it, let's modify it so that it works in a way that says I'm only going to change the name if the name hasn't previously been set to anything. So what if I write something like this? If I say if this name is equal to null, I can do away with the extra parentheses I'll put in here. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a curly brace there because I'm going to do two things. I want to set the name into this.name. Now, this.name being equal to null indicates that there's not been any value set into this.name before, so we've got the opportunity to set its value. And then I'm going to return, let me move the cursor out of the way, true, to indicate that this was done successfully. And I put my curly brace in to close that statement out. If I wasn't able to do that, then I want to return false to indicate that, in fact, this .name was not null, already had a value stored in it, and therefore I didn't want to change it, and I returned false to indicate to the program that called me that I wasn't able to do that successfully. So the change of the name was rejected. And we're going to try this out. Now, I'm going to compile this really fast just to show you this is going to generate an error message. You can see what the error message is. So I compile it, and you notice what the error message down here says. It says, cannot return a value from a method whose type is void. Well, that's because right up here, where I should have said this is going to return a Boolean, I still have the word void in there. But it's going to return true or false, which is a Boolean. So if I change that void to Boolean, then it compiles correctly. So let's go down to the interactions pane and try this out. So I'm going to, first of all, set up a student. Let's call him S1 as we have before, equals new student. We'll just use the variation of the constructor that requires only a name. So we have a new student whose name is John Smith. Okay, so we can type S1, and we've got object name John Smith, average 0.0. Okay, so if I say S1 dot set name to Mary Jones, and I'm not going to put a semicolon here, I'm just going to execute it so it will print out the return value that I get back from this. Notice it returned back false. It can't change the name because the name was already set to something. Let's just verify that by using the getName routine, just verify that in fact the same name is still in there. If we say s1.getName, it's still set to John Smith. It didn't change it over to Mary Jones. Now, if we set up a student S2 using the default constructor, so remember that has no parameters that we pass to it. So student S2, you'll notice student object name null, average 0.0. The name field is null. Now if we go back up to our statement to set the name, we change that over to S2, then you'll notice that s2.setName return true, which indicates it was able to do it. And in fact, if we print out the contents of S2, you notice that the name is now Mary Jones with an average of 0.0. I hope you could. I got an email coming in. Played a nice little bing bong there. I hope that didn't bother you. Okay, so that's a way that we can modify a setter to provide even more error checking. So that's the idea behind getters and setters, that we want to be able to control the way in which information is gotten and information is changed that is part of the class of class student in this case. Okay, so that's a pretty complete exposition of getters and setters, these special purpose methods that allow you to change the values of instance variables or to inquire as to the values of instance variables. So what I want to do now is ask you to think about, what if you're going to create a getter to return the length of the array? Okay, I've got this kind of stub of it put in here right now. And so what line of code would we need to put in here if we were going to create a getter to return us the length of the grade array, which is part of this? Well, what line of code would we put in there? And just so I can demonstrate some other things, I'm going to have it return the number 8 so that I can compile it, because I want to go on now to a demonstration of the main method. I'll compile this. So the last thing we want to talk about in conjunction with all the methods that you can create in a class is a method called main. Main is a special name for a method. If a class contains a method called main, then that method will be viewed by the Java compiler as the point at which execution of this class will begin if you want to execute the class simply as a program. In other words, if we want to do a class definition and within that we're actually creating that as a program, then we have to have a method called main as a starting point. It says start the execution here. Notice that the method called main has type static, which we've seen before. Remember, static indicates that this is a class method and not an object method. It returns a void. It doesn't return anything back. And you can accept this string array of arguments right now on faith. That's something that you must provide. So in this example copied out of the book, all this code is just using the other parts of the student class to set up students and print out information associated with them. If we want to run this, we can go up under the Tools menu and say Run the Documents Main method. And you'll see that it runs the code and prints out. We've got a student named John Smith, whose average is 0.0 because we used the constructor that didn't require the grade array be set, and so there are no grades for John Smith. Student named Susan Jones, average is 98.2 because we did provide some grades for Susan Jones. The other thing I wanted to demonstrate associated with this is how you can run this in what's called line mode. So I'm going to go over here to the Unix interface with Mac OS X, which I'm running. If we say Java student, and you'll see exactly the same thing happens. Java is invoking the Java compiler, running it against the student class, it's compiling the class, and there's the result that you get. If we say, just to show you the difference, if we say Java picture, notice that we get an error message that says no such error, no such method, main, so we can't run it. Okay, so with that, I'm running up against my 10-minute limit, so I need to wrap this up. So I'll just leave you with this parting thought, and I'll provide another short video as a wrap up to all of this. So see you later.